Hello, this is Tristan Hill, and this video will show ROS Workshop Tutorial 2, Install ROS. And what we're going to do is first open our virtual machine and change some settings to make it a little more usable. We will take a first look at the Linux operating system, show a couple features and important tools, and then we are going to install ROS Noetic through the terminal. So we'll learn to use the Linux terminal, and then we'll be done. So this exercise should take approximately 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes if you have a slow internet connection. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is open the Virtualbox program. You'll notice here I'm in Windows 10, and we have installed Virtualbox in the previous tutorial. So we can see the VirtualBox Manager window here, and on the left you can see the virtual machine listed here. You should also see the virtual machine you have created. So I'm going to make sure that's selected and then press start. And you may have to be patient. So notice there's these windows that have popped up. I can go ahead and close those. It's discussing how the mouse is captured between the two computers. Then I'm going to go ahead and log in. So before I do that, what we want to do is make the display here a little more usable. There's a few different ways you can do it, but the way I recommend is move the view into scaled mode. Again, this is just one approach. And notice here it tells you you can switch to scale mode or back from scaled mode with the host C combination. And so my host is right control unless you've changed it. So we can do right control plus C to get back. So we'll switch now. You notice this is kind of scaled to this window here. And then I'm going to do a maximize here, right? Again, there are other ways to set this up. I encourage you to make it how you like it. So now I'm going to go ahead and start to log in. You can see my username was already there, and I'm going to type in my password and wait. So now we have our operating system loaded here or logged into our operating system. And right off the bat, you can see our mascot, the cat. This is the fossa, which I don't know much about, but some Madagascar cat. It's the mascot or the code name for this version of the operating system. So what we're going to first do is change the display. We've done part of that, but the second half of that will have to do with the resolution. So again, the first half was change to scale mode, go to full screen. The second part of the display fix is press the Windows key, which opens the launcher, and find the app called Display, open Displays, and then we're going to change the resolution. So here we have a few different options in resolution, and we're going to choose the one that makes sense for your screen. Really, this is screen dependent, so you might be changing a different option, choosing a different option than what I choose. I'll leave this over here for now. And I have a 2K screen. So honestly, these 2K, this is the 2K size, that's the 4K size. This doesn't make sense for me because I actually can't have my virtual machine have the full resolution. So what I have found is that I tend to step down the resolution one notch from my full screen resolution and find an aspect ratio that fits. And these are the common ones these days. One of these two. So I think I'm here. Actually, I think I'm wider. I think it might be 10 here. So I'm going to pick this and press apply. And if you have scroll bars appear on the sides or you're kind of losing some of the view, then you might not like it. But if you look around and you like it, you can press keep and go with that. And now we have a much more usable space or display to work with. Once again, you can get back to this and change those through the Displays app, which is, or maybe it's just the Displays page in settings. So now we can close the settings, that settings page, and we're here looking at our operating system once again. So one more thing you can do is customize this just like any other operating system, and we'll talk about that next. Okay, so let's look at this new OS briefly before we get started with the tutorial. And it's mostly intuitive because it has a graphical user interface, or we would call a graphical desktop environment. And what that means is it has buttons and a graphical front end. Oh, you can see something goofy just happened while I was talking. It's flipped back to my previous resolution. So it's kind of awkward. So what we're going to do again is go to display. So that's in Windows. I'm going to make sure I'm clicked here. Go to displays. And I am going to, again, if you have to, drag this over and choose my resolution again. And I'm going to pick this 1900 number at 1610 and click apply and click keep. Hopefully that'll stick for the remainder. So we may have to do that every session. I know it's kind of a pain. Maybe we can find a permanent fix. So we'll close that. And now point out a few things in this operating system. Over here, you have your on and off buttons. Okay, so you can log in and log out this way by clicking here and looking through this menu. You have your connection settings here also, and your basic stuff, your volume up there. You may notice it might show wired connection even though your source is wireless. That's because you may be using or using a virtual machine. Over here on the other side of the screen, you can see the favorites bar. It's just a kind of a quick access to some of the apps. You can customize this if you'd like. I kind of like to remove these. I don't really want them here, but I kind of like to leave these here. Here's your file manager. So it's kind of like Explorer or whatever file manager is called in Mac. And here is Firefox. So this operating system ships or comes default with Firefox. So it will work for most of our purposes. You can get Chrome if you have the extra space for it. But I encourage you to just stick with Firefox unless you run into a need for something else. So before we proceed, we need to check our internet connection. So you can do that over here. It says wired, connected. That looks good. It's a reasonable idea to check that the time and date makes sense. If the time and date is not correct, the remainder of the tutorial may not work correctly. So you can see I'm 1504. That actually matches my 304 and September 1st, that time. So, and that is the time of day. So that's important. If that was way off, there could be some issues. If that is off, the first strategy is make sure your Windows time is correct. If that's not correct, you can set that through the adjust date and time and resync. And then if you reboot, you should link up there. Okay, now what we're going to do that we have a workable environment or usable environment here is let's look at the file structure really quick before we get going on the tutorial. And once again, this is the graphical interface to the file structure. And the only thing I want to point out is if you go to other locations, you go to computer, notice computer is this /. So that's the root or the beginning of the file structure. So if you go here, this is the entire file structure. I like to put it in details mode, kind of zoom out so we can see it. So that's everything on the computer. and we are going to spend most of the time here in home. So if you take away one lesson about the file structure from this is that um, most of the computer is password protected. That's where the operating system lives and the programs are installed. And we will do most of our user work there in home, your user here. So now that we've seen a little bit about the file structure, we are going to close that and proceed with the tutorial. So I'm going to open the internet and go ahead and go to search here, and you could find the um, tutorial in multiple ways. You can find it through our learning management system, or you can find it this way. If you do ROS workshop T-Hill robot and Google, this should be near the top hit. So here it is. And a couple of things to check here. We'll just make sure it's the right one. I'm sure it's not the only one. So you have this one, and here's kind of the user and the name of the project. Here is the branch. So it should default to Noetic, but again, we are going to install ROS Noetic, so we want to make sure we're on this branch here. Okay, so here is the table of contents of the ROS workshop. In the first class, we tend to get through this first half here. And so we've done tutorial 1, and I can go ahead here to tutorial 2, install ROS. And once again, we are going to get going installing ROS Noetic on Ubuntu 2004. So we'll take a minute to look at the prerequisites here and then do the install. So the first one says complete tutorial 1 first, and the little note here is if you have a Linux computer, you could skip that tutorial 1. This is intended for 2004. If you use a non-2004 version, you may have problems. The internet is required, and as we said, this should only take about 15 minutes, maybe less or more. So next, if possible, make a snapshot of your virtual machine, and we're going to copy some commands. So to begin, we're going to learn about Linux commands. So in these tutorials throughout the workshop, the commands will be shown in these formatted boxes here, maybe shown in gray depending on your display there, and in this monospace. So ask if you have questions, but these commands are what you'll be entering. So the first step is to update our Ubuntu system. So we're going to do this in a 2-step process, and we're going to do it through the Ubuntu terminal. So to begin, we're going to press Control-Alt-T, Control-Alt-T, and that's going to open this default terminal here. And I'm going to bring it down a little bit here. So bring it over here. And let me make this. So the first command is sudo apt update. And what we're doing is checking for updates. We're checking what is available compared to what is installed in our system. So we're going to type that command or copy and paste that command and press enter. We will need our password that you set up. The nice thing is the sudo command, this prefix sudo is a prefix to the command apt, and this is a part of apt we're going to use. This gives us the elevated privileges, kind of like login as admin. And so that is what required the password. The nice thing is we only have to do that once until a timeout. Now we can see that a couple things have happened. This is actually a good example. We have checked, and we were in the process of doing a terminal-based update. And then the software updater, which we saw last time, the graphical software updater popped up, periodically to remind us we could update. And so what we want to do is go ahead and close that. So we don't want to do both at the same time. And we'll proceed with what we're going to do. Then we're going to upgrade. So apply those available upgrades. So it'll say sudo again apt upgrade. And what that is with elevated privileges, use this program apt to upgrade. And then we'll press enter. And this tells us a summary of what will be installed. And then we're going to give a confirmation why to initiate the installation. So you've noticed there was a low number of packages listed there. It said 12. If you had not updated since the initial installation of the operating system, you may have, many more than that, and that process may take a little more time. But you notice mine was kind of short, and that is something we want to do periodically to keep our code updated. And yeah, so we want to do that maybe once a session. No more than that would be needed. Okay, so we have completed step 0, update the Ubuntu system. Now we're going to continue with the install ROS. So the remaining of the steps 1.1 through 1.6 are install ROS, and those come directly from the ROS website. So if you want an alternative source, you can click here and you can come here and look at the ROS instructions. These should match those very closely. So now we will begin with step 1.1. Notice this is much longer terminal command. And if you want some practice typing, you could try that one, but this one is much easier to just copy. So I can bring this copy widget here, and I'm going to come to my terminal, copy button, I guess. And you could do a right click like this and do a paste, but I'm going to do a Control-Shift-V instead, and then once again enter for the command. This is setting up the download that we're about to do. Now, step 1.3, we're going to take this and enter it. Press enter. What this is doing is similar to what we've done before, is actually installing a new package that didn't previously exist. So we're going to confirm with a Y. And now we're going to download a file that is associated with downloading ROS securely. So we're going to now paste that in, and we should get a confirmation OK. So we got this nice little OK. If you have any errors there are some solutions we can figure out. But that, if you followed through to here, you should get a confirmation OK. All right, so next, to summarize, we've done step 1.1 through 1.3, and we may have gone right over step 1.1 because there was nothing to do here. So we've done nothing, entered those commands, and now we are on step 1.4. So you will notice there's a duplicate. We've already done this, but it's important for us to complete this step because we've changed the way our package repository is set up. So we're or our package list is set up, and so we're going to copy that and put it in here. So you could type that one too, of course. So that is another confirmation. All packages are up to date. Next, will be the main installation. So we're going to copy this line here to install, download, and install ROS. So again, I'm doing a Control-Shift-V to do a paste. And let's talk about this command really quickly. This is sudo, so with elevated privileges, or we call root privileges, as we say in Linux. We're going to use a program called apt. We're going to install, and this is the package we're going to install. This prefix on the package means that it's a ROS package and it's a version Noetic. This means that's the full-blown thing. So now we have the terminal command entered in there. We're just going to press enter, and we see a lot of things are going to be installed. So each one of these items in this list is a Linux package, and most of them are associated with ROS. Some of them may be a ROS dependency that is an outside of ROS that's required for this to work. So again, we're going to confirm with a Y to initiate the download. So we can see this process is two parts. Right now we're in the download stage, and depending on your internet connection, this might be very fast, might be very slow. If you're on campus, this may be dependent on just your bandwidth at that time. So I predict it will take 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm going to pause this video and we'll return when it gets done. Okay, now that that has finished, we can see that hopefully we have no errors. And so, you obviously you couldn't see all of that because there was thousands of lines or hundreds of lines, but we don't see any errors at the bottom, which is good. And what we do see is a list of packages that were installed. So all of these are ROS, Noetic, XYZ, and that indicates some package. This one is Laser Assembler, and it's for the Noetic version of ROS. But by the way, this is a Linux package. It happens to be associated with ROS. So we are going to pick back up where we left off, and we are in step 1.4. So we've done the install ROS Noetic desktop full step, and now we are, I'll zoom in a little here, we are going to complete step 1.5 and 1.6. So this step is a environment configuration step. So setup.bash is the setup program for ROS Noetic, and we are going to add this line to our setup program or setup script bash rc. So this first command, echo a string to a text file. That string refers to a ROS setup script. So let's do that. I know that description was about as clear as mud. Once again, please echo to write a string to a file called .bashrc. Once we have done that, we can look at what happened. So if I do cat, which is a way to view things, actually I'm going to do tail, which is a way to look at the end of something. I'm going to do curly tilde dot bash rc, and this is the end of the file bash rc, and we can recognize the string that we just appended to that file with these double caret and echo. So next step is to run the program that we have just modified. So again, once again, we've modified the file bash rc, and we need to run it or source it. So we'll do source tilde / dot bash rc. So this source means run that script, and this tilde / is the location of a file which is called .bashrc. The dot indicates its hidden file. So we ran that by pressing enter, and fortunately we see we have no errors. So this is a step. If you had syntax errors or other issues with your setup, you may see an error warning. It's good that we see nothing there. Now we have completed step 1.5, complete the environment setup. The nice thing about that environment setup stage is it is an automatic environment setup. So every time we open a terminal, this line source should be run for us. And so we don't have to do that ever again. Well, we have to do it every time, but it's going to happen for us automatically. Okay, now on to step 1.6. We're going to install some support packages. So minimum, you need this first one, Python ROS depth, but it won't hurt to go ahead and grab all of them. So I recommend copying this entire command, pasting it into the terminal, and confirming with a Y. And this one shouldn't take too long, so we'll wait it out. We can get our next command staged here. And ROSDEP is a program that helps manage dependencies for ROS. So the name ROS dependency, we're going to do an initialization of that. So I copied that here, come over here and paste that here. It's going to tell me now you need to update that thing. That's just too short to copy and paste. And now we have a list of distributions or versions of ROS. You can actually see a bunch of them. And I'll tell you, I'll give myself away. I actually touched a few of these. I used Indigo. I guess we skipped Jade, Kinetic. Now we're all the way here in Noetic. And soon, someday, we'll be rolling. Okay, so now we've completed 1.6 and it's time to test. So we'll do just a very basic test here. And before I do that, I'm gonna kind of wipe or clean the terminal screen because it's noisy. I don't like looking at all that. I'm gonna press. Actually, I'll leave that away. I'll show that later. So our test will just be our ROS ROS core, and enter. And now we have successfully turned on ROS. And it may seem a little cryptic here, but all this is good. So briefly, what does it show? It shows that we're version Noetic. This is called, the master node. I typically refer to it as ROS core, not that term. And there we have it. So that is completion of the tutorial, but we have to close some things before we walk away. So if you notice, we're in the terminal here, and this command and the ROS core has occupied the this session of the terminal. And what I mean is I can't type another command in here. I could probably type some text down here, but it's not being accepted as input because I don't see my, my host, user and host in the place where I put an input. So you have two options. You could open a new terminal and type a new command if you want to do some other cool ROS stuff, like you wanted to some packages, maybe do some other stuff with, or you maybe wanted to learn about how to use the program apt. You could go do some stuff in a separate terminal, but you can't do it here until you close that process. So the last little lesson here is click here, Control C to close that process. And now you have successfully turned off ROS core. So that means you installed ROS correctly. One last check, which I don't think we need, but it's nice to double check, is to close these terminals, open a new terminal and try again. And all this is checking is the automatic environment setup that we just mentioned. So it means every time you open your new terminal, you get a environment that is ready to run ROS Noetic. Okay, I'll close that, and now we're done. We'll complete the tutorial by closing my virtual machine. Power off button. Power off. And now we're back to Windows. Thank you for watching.